Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to double check that the audio is coming through nice and clean. Excellent. All right, folks, welcome back to another Firestorm stream. My name is Pat Imrie, and today we're going to be continuing with our A to Z of creatures sculpting inside of Zbrush. And this week we are starting an ibex. So basically a big mountain goat, in case you're wondering. So I've, as always, if this is maybe your first time to the stream, the rules of this are quite simple. We pick an animal or a creature, beginning with the letter of the alphabet that we're currently on, i.e. we're on I right now, and then we find some reference and we sculpt live without any prep. The only prep that we're allowed is finding reference for our creature. All right, so let's get stuck into this. Now, before we start sculpting, I want to point out a couple of the references I've got here. So what I generally do, so that everyone's aware of what it is that we're sculpting, I will find a royalty-free image that we can safely use on the stream. And it's this one down here in the bottom, and you'll find this on Pixabay. And to be honest, if you're actually looking for royalty-free images, Pixabay is a really useful place to go, particularly if you're a streamer and you're just looking for reference and you want to actually have it on your screen at the same time. And the one at the top is from Dimensions, which is another website, just gives you dimensions for lots of different objects and creatures. So worth checking that out as well. All right. Okay, folks. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to kind of work their way in before we get going. So if anyone has arrived early or wants to say hi in the chat, please feel free to do so. And as always, folks, please let me know if the audio is coming through clear on your side. If not, I can always adjust the levels for the microphone. Hey, Manic, thanks very much for coming along. You'll all have to excuse me while I warm up my voice. Audio is okay. Excellent. I'm going to warm up my voice with tea. We'll see how many people we get before we start. Also gives me a little bit of time to figure out how I'm going to go ahead and sculpt this creature and how much of it I want to do on this stream. Do I want to try and create the whole creature, or do we want to just do kind of a bust and then focus more on the details and maybe do the painting, similar like we did with the hippo last week? Now, this week I will be streaming today. I'm also going to be streaming tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So 6 o'clock or 6:30. I think I'm 6:30 tomorrow. So I am going to be streaming tomorrow night as well, and also on Thursday this week. So we're going to have plenty of time to work on a bunch of different creatures. So how are we doing? Okay, we've got about 48 odd people. This is about the norm, so we will make a start. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope your week has all started well wherever you are in the world. And this week we are going to be sculpting an ibex, or to be honest, the references I found, it's specifically an alpine ibex. There's lots of different variations. So, and I think I might do the bust because I quite like the shape, obviously, that we've got here coming down from the shoulder. And it means that we can do more in the time. And I would say that most people are probably quite interested in the portraiture, really, of the creature. Obviously, we can do full creatures as well, but I think for this one, because we've got such an interesting kind of creature to do with the head, I think we might focus just on doing that, because we've got these horns, etc. There's a lot of nice details in there that we might want to spend a little bit more time doing. Okay, folks. Well, with that in mind, let's get started. So I think I'm going to take this image here and I'm going to scale it down a little bit. I will use my dimensions one when I'm getting the proportions set, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my reference that I have off screen, and I'm going to use that and I'm just observe it. So I'm always looking at my screen and back and forth between my reference. That's a good thing to kind of keep in mind when you are practicing or when you're trying to learn to sculpt or just practicing at sculpting, drawing, anything where you're using reference. Look at the reference, back to your piece. Reference, back to your piece. Okay? Now, to begin, I think we will... Oh, hi, Polly. Good afternoon. So I think to begin, yeah, we're going to do some Z-spheres again. Everybody loves Z-spheres. So everybody loves Z-spheres. So let me just close down a couple of things here. There we go. So as always, folks, we're going to go into our tool palette here, go into the Z-sphere, drag that out onto our canvas, and we're going to tap T to go into the edit mode. Excuse me 2 seconds, folks, while I just shift one of my... I've got my iPad set up for keeping an eye on the stream, so I'm just moving that out the way. There we go. All right. So we have our Z-sphere positioned. I'm going to move around to the side, and actually, you know, before we do that, we're going to make sure that we have our symmetry on, and I'm going to draw out a Z-sphere on the top. Just going to rotate around to the back, and I'm going to draw out a Z-sphere at the back as well. Now, whenever you're drawing out new Z-spheres and you have symmetry on, you want to keep an eye out for the green icon in the middle. All right, I'll zoom in so you can see this a bit easier. As you get from one edge of your model to the middle, you'll know you're in the center because the two symmetrical icons will snap together and they'll go green, and then you know that you can create a new Z-sphere and it will be in the middle of your mesh. So I'm going to tap A to go into my preview here. And I'm not overly happy with the way that's looking, so let's do a little bit of adjustment here. That's better. There we go. And do you know what? I've had a change of heart. I had a change of heart of how I want to do this. I'm going to go back into draw mode. I'm going to draw out 2 Z-spheres at the side, and I'm going to draw one down the middle. What I'm now doing here is I'm trying to recreate this shape here on our goat, or on our ibex, just this curve here. That's what we're going to go for here. But you'll notice that as I tap A to go into my preview mode, it's really, really dense. And we don't really want a mesh this dense to begin with, or I certainly don't. It's not what I prefer to use as my workflow. So I'm going to go into the adaptive skin options, and I'm going to reduce the Dynamesh resolution all the way down to 0, and then hit preview again. And this is more in keeping with what I'm looking to create. All right. There we go. Just going to keep adjusting until I get a shape closer to what it is I need. And then we can start actually drawing out the neck. Now, something you'll notice is that if you're in Move, Scale, or Rotate, you're not going to be able to see that green icon. It's only going to show up if you're in Draw mode when you're drawing out a new Z-sphere. I'm going to pull that all the way out. We get something like that. I must be honest though, I am quite curious as to what's happening to Z-spheres in Zbrush, because they do not behave the way they used to. I think with some of the new updates, there's definitely some strange ways that, in the way that they're they are being skinned. So it just means that we have to be a bit more careful when we're creating our meshes. So we want something like that. Okay. Right, so bear with me. What I'm going to do here, folks, is I'm going to switch out, and I'm actually going to start a fresh Z-sphere here. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, sorry folks, my ZBrush is... Alright folks, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to fix my ZBrush. I'm going to restart ZBrush. I'm going to come back because there's definitely some strangeness going on. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Alright folks, sorry about that. We are now back, so we're going to start again. We're going to create ourselves a Z-sphere. I'm going to go into edit mode. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to tap A. I'm going to take a look at the mesh and see how clean it is. And then I'm going to immediately go into adaptive skin, lower my resolution, and just double check the preview of that mesh again. So that looks okay to me. I'm going to draw out a new Z-sphere, and I'm probably going to get something like this. Okay, so sometimes it will twist over. You can fix it, but what I'll do instead is I'm going to draw a new Z-sphere on the front of the mesh, and that should fix things. There we go. So now I've got my Z-spheres the way I want them, and now we can start to draw out the rest of our mesh. Really confused as to why we are getting such strange behavior with our Z-spheres. Bear with me folks, I'm just trying to see if we can get something that's working. Okay, alright folks, again I'm going to change how we do this because I'm not very happy with how the Z-spheres are behaving, and I'm not entirely sure why. So there's the honest answer, I don't know why. So I'm going to clear off my canvas. We're probably going to lose a few viewers for this because it's not been very exciting so far. So let's try and improve things a bit. So let's start with a Z-sphere. Sorry, not a Z-sphere, sorry, a standard sphere. Go into edit mode, and we will immediately go into geometry, or we'll turn it into a polymesh 3D, into geometry, dynamesh, and we will dynamesh this down. This is a nice scenario for what you do when Z-spheres don't work. Yeah, exactly, Polly. The thing is, folks, sometimes things will just stop working in software, and it can be all sorts of various reasons. It's not necessarily something that you're doing. It might not be even something wrong with the software. Okay, sometimes there's just errors. What I'm probably going to do is after the stream, I'll do a full initialize of ZBrush, load in all my custom tools again, and that'll probably fix it. And if you do find that ZBrush is behaving a bit weirdly, if you make sure you save all your custom UI, etc. and colors, go up to preferences and press the initialize ZBrush button at the top. Okay, so that's up here, initialize ZBrush. That will reset everything back to default and should hopefully fix any weird behavior that the software might be kind of exhibiting. So with that in mind, we're now just going to, as I said, get stuck in and start blocking out our ibex. So we're going to stretch out our Dynamesh sphere. I'm going to go into the taper here, and just from above, I'm going to taper down the front, and I'm actually going to taper the back out. Can I flatten that a little bit? There we go. That's better. There we go. And just accept that. Then we're going to grab the move brush, make sure that we're in symmetry, and we're just going to start shaping the overall head shape here. Now, again, I am using reference off screen initially, and then once I'm fairly happy with the outline that I've created for the creature, then what I'll do is I'll bring in the reference from that I have on the side here, and I'll see how the proportions are lining up. So again, it's just a way for me to practice my observational skills, okay? But I have realized I'm missing a skull. So I think I've got a skull reference here. Let me just see if I can find one. Well, that's not what I expected. Those are some gnarly looking skulls. They look great. That is a really, really cool skull. Obviously you can't see it, I can see it, but Clip Hamper, yo, hey Clip Hamper, thank you very much for joining in and saying hi. We like it when people say hi, folks, so please don't be shy. Right, let's grab a skull image here. I don't have any I can share, but I can pop it into my pure ref, and I'll use that just to inform my reference a bit more. Okay, so and again, the way I work is I always tend to use, damn, Twitch is not responding to my follows anymore. Interesting. That's weird. So I'm just going to use the move brush and the sculpt brush here to, the clay tubes brush, sorry, just to roughly block out the skull. I'm not going to go hugely detailed with it. It's just really to give myself some indications as to where things need to go. You're a pro, it seems. I guess you could call me a pro, yeah. You could call me a pro. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. So, almost 20 years. Okay. So I've given myself a really rough Ultra Pro Max. Thank you. So, just sketching out. Okay. I apologize, folks. I'm going to have to take another small break. There's somebody at my front door. That's an afternoon for you. I'll be back in 2 minutes, folks. folks, sorry about that. Okay, what's this? What have I missed in the chat? I am so bad at Blender. Okay, if you feel that you're bad at Blender, you have to practice more. But I guarantee you're not as bad as you think you are. I can almost guarantee that. I tried a method from your personal stream with making the skull before the flesh out and it helped. I forgot how useful that step is. It is very helpful, yeah. Figuring out what the actual underlying form of the creature or the character that you're trying to make is going to help you a lot. So it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be detailed. You just want to give yourself a few landmarks to work with while you're actually creating. So again, I'm not doing a fully realistic skull here. I'm just giving myself something to work with. So I can share. Discord, do you see? If you are interested in joining the Discord clip hamper, you will find the link in, or is the link? Yes, there's a QR code with a link in the bottom. Oh, you've joined. Excellent. Okay. So this is getting there. That's looking enough for me to work with at the very least. Need to change up some of the proportions of the skull. My apologies, folks. Again, it's just one of those days. I'm apologising a lot. I forgot to put my phone on silent. How rude. So let's keep going. The other good thing about doing a skull is that it's a good way to warm up as well with your character. So that is one of the reasons I'm doing this. I've never sculpted an ibex before, so I'm doing the skull to give me a little bit more of an understanding of the creature's anatomy itself. And that's why if you are tasked with creating anything, any creature or character that you're tasked with creating, do research before jumping straight in. You know, get to know the creature. And something that I can really recommend is watch videos online. So watch the creature moving. Even if you're just going to be sculpting a still, watch how the creature moves. Okay, it will actually help. Okay, it gives you a better sense of how the creature actually kind of functions in its day-to-day. So we've obviously got the horns that are going to come off here as well, like that. And the horns on these things are crazy. It's one of the reasons I wanted to actually sculpt one, because they're really cool. Find animal, Pat, what about when it's a fantasy creature? When it's a fantasy creature, yes, you've answered your own question there. You find animals that have a similar structure to their anatomy, and this comes from comparative anatomy, all right, where you want to look at the closest real world version that you can, and then adapt that into your fantasy creature, okay? Because you will always create a more believable creature if you ground it in realism. Even if you're doing something more stylized, I recommend having a full understanding of the anatomy. Stylized work is not easier than realistic work. I actually don't think either is harder than the other, because to me it's all just an interpretation of a reference. Whether or not it comes down to, for example, if you're doing a stylized character and you have a concept of that, to me there's no difference between doing that and doing the likeness of someone, because you're still trying to copy your reference. You're still trying to interpret your reference. What makes something like a realistic likeness harder to do is that humans are more aware when something doesn't look quite right. So if you don't get something spot on, it's going to show up and we're going to notice it. So that's why likenesses are so difficult to do, because as humans we're very critical of things that look kind of human but not quite. Okay. Hey Firestorm Studio, how are you doing today? Okay, so I think we're getting somewhere close with this. Of course we do need a mandible, don't we? We need a mandible. So how are we going to make a mandible? Well, we will just append in a cube. A sphere. So we'll append in a sphere and we'll do the same thing. Just going to scale this down. And we'll dynamesh it. Symmetry's on, that's fine. Instantly got ourselves a mandible. We don't have to, again, we're not needing to spend a lot of time on this. We're just giving ourselves a warm-up and we're giving ourselves something underlying to work with, because our Z-spheres decided that they didn't want to play today. So cute skull, good practice for W is for Wendigo. Yes, we are doing Wendigo for W. That has already been decided. There is a bunch of letters that have already they've been decided. For example, we will be doing a Kelpie for the letter K, which, funnily enough, this is going to be good practice for that as well, actually. So, I'm just going to put in a little bit of extra detail here. So, but yes, and we will be doing a Japanese macaque for the for J, so that's coming up next. And there we go. Okay, so I have the skull. So what I'm going to do here, I'm not going to spend much more time on it. I'm going to merge it down, and then I'm going to dynamesh it together. And then I'm going to use I am going to append a Z-sphere here. And I am going to try again with the Z-spheres. I'm not sure what's going on, but we will try again. Just going to scale that down. Scale it up. And this is just so I can create the neck. Ah, the great Scottish sticky horse. That's a good way of putting it. Yes, the Scottish sticky horse. Yeah. Yes, and our very own Peter Campo has kindly created a concept for me to sculpt from. So I'm very much looking forward to working on that. There we go, that's worked okay. So we're going to create an adaptive skin for that Z-sphere. So we take the Dynamesh resolution down, make adaptive skin, and we will append that into the rest of our subtools, and then we'll merge down again. Actually, before we do that, let's do a quick subdivide, and I'm just going to really quickly outline the vertebrae here. Am I in a minute? Am I counting right on the skeleton that I have? 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, 5. Okay. Let's just do a bit of vacuum curve. There we go. All right. So now that that's done, we can do a merge down. Now I have my rough skull and the neck. Now we can actually start to block out our character. So we're going to append a cube. We're going to move that to the top, and I'm going to reposition it down here at the base of the neck. That's going to become our first save file. So we'll make a new folder there, and we'll just call this ibex 001. And now we're just going to use a method that you've all seen me use quite a lot before, and that is just blocking out with primitive shapes. So we'll go to append, we'll grab a Z-sphere again. So at this time, when I make a Dynamesh for it, I'm going to lower it quite a lot. That should be fine. Mirror and weld. And we're going to block this out in stages, similar to the way that we did our hippo. Okay, so for that I need a face. Close up of the face of the ibex. What's this? Ah, okay. Everyone is just chatting away and talking about Blender in the chat. That's fine. I'm not hurt. I'm kidding, folks. I'm kidding. So what we'll do here is we're going to block out the very back with a Z-sphere. Sorry, not a Z-sphere, a Dynamesh sphere. And then I'm going to duplicate this same sphere and I'm going to use it around the eyes. It's Roar, thank you very much for the follow. Much appreciated. So now we can do this a couple of ways, by the way. I should probably explain this. You can hold down Control, right? If you hold down Control and click and drag without symmetry on, you will make a copy, right? And I'm going to outline how this works because a lot of people, this can stump a lot of people. So if you have an object, and this is generally if you're using Dynameshes, make sure you don't have any subdivision, okay? Hey, it's Roar. Thank you very much for coming along and saying hi. Much appreciated. What we can do here is, as long as we have no subdivisions, if we hold down the Control key and click and drag with our object, we will make a duplicate of it. And you'll see the one before it becomes masked, okay? They are one object, but two separate meshes, right? Which is really handy. However, if I hold down Control, click and drag a little bit, and then I release my Control key and keep dragging, Zbrush will keep duplicating it. And it's very similar to if you've used something like duplicate transform inside of Maya, where you set, you duplicate the object, move it along a set amount, and then continue to duplicate by transform, and it'll repeat that same action. So if you do have something that you need to create that is evenly spaced, you can duplicate the object, say like that, and then just keep doing it. Okay, so just another little tip for duplication. Or what we can do is we can go into the subtool palette and we can just duplicate it normally here, and that'll create a new subtool for it, which is what I'm going to do here, because I want to be able to reposition this here. And this isn't the eyeball, this is going to be the kind of eye socket surround, and then we're going to do a mirror, merge into one subtool. That's okay. I'm going to make sure I have symmetry on because I'm going to do a small adjustment here to the shape. And I'm going to pull this back. Let me just bring up and move them across here so we can see what we're doing. And at any time, folks, if something isn't clear about what it is I'm creating, or you need me, or you're not sure what part of the model I'm creating because of you can't see the reference, fire it into the chat and I'm more than happy to go back, repeat things as needed. Because remember, these streams are about learning. So we want you to enjoy learning things, okay? And we want you to enjoy and take something away from each of these streams. That's the goal, is for you to learn and kind of have a bit of fun while you're doing it, all right? That's why a lot of us are quite silly here on our streams, okay? We're deliberately quite silly so that you guys aren't getting bored. That's why I'm like that anyway, all right? So what I'm doing here is I'm actually creating this eye surround area. It's not completely cylindrical, or spherical, should I say. It does come back a little bit towards the jaw, like that, okay? And I'm just going to scale the cranium up a bit here, and I think I'll cut it as well. So I'm going to take the knife curve tool here. Love this tool here, and just slice it, make sure I've got symmetry on. There we go. Perfect. And now that I've done that, I'm going to take the cranium and the eye socket section, and we're going to merge them down. Perfect. Next, we're going to build in the front of the snout here, and for that we are going to append, we're actually going to take this and we're going to use our insert mesh brush, and we're going to insert a capsule in the middle here and move that into place. I'm going to go into the options here and I'm going to taper it at one end. Bear with me, I'm going to turn off my symmetry, center my pivot, and then I'm going to taper this out. Accept that, scale it, and then we can use the move brush to refine the shape. And the goal here is to block out enough of the shape that when we Dynamesh it together, we more or less have a finished creature. That's kind of the goal with this approach. So it looks a little bit weird to begin with, and then it slowly starts to appear. What you plan on doing? Hi, Polly. Okay. What's Dynamesh? What's Dynamesh? Okay. Well, I can explain Dynamesh for you. That's no problem. I can do that very shortly. So hold on 2 seconds and I will explain what Dynamesh is. What I want to do first though is I want to bring in a little bit more shape to the top. So I'm going to import, or I'm going to use a primitive here, and I'm going to import another capsule, but this time we're going to do it the opposite way. And just bring that in, scale it up, and flatten it out. So we can do this a little bit earlier, just so that we can demonstrate what Dynamesh actually is. I'll be back. Okay. Well, let us know when you're back, Cliffhamper, and we'll go over Dynamesh. Okay. So let me just, I do have, we have ears that we need to put in as well, so we're going to get that sorted just now. So for this, I think I'm going to append a sphere. And we're going to do a couple of different things here. We're going to look at a couple of different ways of creating geometry in Zbrush today. That was kind of my plan for this. And I don't think we'll be doing this one as quickly as we did our hippo, primarily because I want to go into a little bit more detail about creating certain different types of geometry. Okay, so for the ear here, I'm going to slice the object like that using my knife brush tool. Okay, just kind of cutting it at an angle. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the, actually no, we'll append another sphere, and I'm going to scale this down to a smaller shape, and I'm going to move it into the ear. Turn off symmetry. There we go. Like that. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is in my subtool palette, I'm going to click on my sphere here. Now, if you look at the very top of your subtool palette, there's a bunch of different icons. Okay, you've got the eyeball, you've got the brush icon, then there's a couple of different states of circles, and these are your Boolean operations in Zbrush. So if I click the second one and turn on live Boolean, I'll be able to cut out the shape of my sphere. And what's cool about this is that the object that's doing the cutting is this second one. So if I rename that cut and this one just ear, we know that this bottom one is doing the cutting. And while live Boolean is active, if I move it around, I will get an interactive way to shape the interior of that ear, all right? Which is cool because if I grab the move brush here, I can start manipulating the object that's doing the cutting, and I can smooth it as well. Like so. And if we turn off live Boolean, you'll get to see what that shape is actually doing, like that, all right? Now, obviously, there's loads of different ways that you could create this shape. You wouldn't necessarily do it this way, but I just wanted to show you a different way of working. So if you go in and make some changes to the cutting shape, they will show up in your live Boolean model, okay? And then if we want to turn this into a real mesh that we can then sculpt on further, we scroll down, go under Boolean and choose Make Boolean Mesh. Make sure that we have the ear selected. Make Boolean Mesh. All being well, it will actually work. Sometimes you'll get a little error, sometimes you won't, but you'll see here in the top of my subtool palette, I have, made a mistake. I should have turned off my my skull and the neck, but it's fine. We can fix that. It's not a big deal. So if we go to append, bring it in, I now have this new ear, and I'm just going to get rid of the skull here. So we'll just get rid of this. Delete. There we go. Now I've got a nice clean ear that I can work with. Turn all that back on, grab the ear, and let's move that into place. What's this? I want to, let me just move that back. What's this? I want to make an amazing scene VFX animation from Civil War, Mark 46 suit up. How I know how much parts I have to separate or some how much move because it happens so quickly in animation. Ah, okay. Well, for something like that, the best thing to do is obviously find reference of the suit. That's the one thing. Find as much of it as you can. And find as many clips as you can of it actually suiting up, if you will, and mechanically working. That would be your first port of call. Reference is always going to help you there, okay? Mr. Whitefire, Pat sculpting a ram. I am indeed. We're sculpting an ibex today. So yeah. That's what I would do first, is I would find as much reference as you can for what it is you're actually wanting to create. And then once you've got all the reference, you need to do an asset list. You need to do an asset breakdown for that. Because you'll need to go through each part one by one and see which parts are actually needing to move and how much and that type of thing. So there's quite a lot of work in that. There's a lot of work to do there. But the key thing is doing a plan of the different parts of the asset that you're going to need and which ones may need to move. I'm not a rigger, so it's not really something I'm overly knowledgeable about, because I'm sure there's a lot of better ways to do it than how I would go about it. And you can find out. I'm sure you'll find out kind of information for that if you join the Discord. We've got lots of people a lot more knowledgeable about rigging in the Firestorm Discord. So I would recommend definitely checking them out. Okay. Again, this isn't going to be perfect, but we're going to do mirror, merge into one subtool. And let's see. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. I think I need to readjust the shape, the kind of scale here of some of these parts. So I'm just going to do an auto groups here. Take the nose and scale that up a bit. Bring it down. That looks better. And similar, and do you know what actually? I think what we'll do, we'll just make this whole part the whole head. We'll just make our lives a bit easier. Oh, what did I do there? What did I break? Auto groups. Why is that giving me two poly groups? There we go. So try that again. Scale up the whole part of the head, like so. And we'll grab our move brush and we'll just start to expand that out. And I'm going to pull this back like so, and I'm going to hit Control D to add a bit more subdivision to it. So I've got a little bit more to, oh, that's interesting. What's happened there? All right. Let's do a mirror and weld. And let's do a Dynamesh. Or actually, let's see here, geometry. And turn off Dynamesh, and let's do modify topology. And we'll just do a weld points. There we go. Great. That was okay. I'm just going to pull them together like so. And weld points. And if it doesn't work, we'll just inflate them so they come closer together and try weld points again. We'll just do increase the distance. There we go. So, as I was saying, what I'm going to do with this part here is I'm going to pull this back so that we're roughly where the front of the teeth would be, because obviously goats have this, and rams and ibexes, they've got this kind of, and horses as well, they have a section at the front of their mouth where kind of all the lips and the muzzle actually sits, and then further back you've got the teeth. And in some cases you've got teeth kind of sitting in the front as well of this part, but not always, okay? So I'm just going to readjust the shape of this a little bit, and I'm going to add in a new shape here. So we will do our insert mesh brush, grab a polysphere, I'm going to add that in to the side, turn on dynamic symmetry, and then position that in. And again, remember, what we're aiming for here is to have to do very little when we get to the Dynamesh stage, which means that the creature can look a little bit weird to begin with, right? So we've probably made the ears a little bit too high res, but that's okay. We can fix it all. I'm going to take another polysphere and flatten that out. And we're going to use that for the connection of the ear to the head. Like so. Okay. I'm going to go back to the skull because I think I've made the lower mandible just a bit too heavy. So I'll turn on transparency here so I can see what I'm doing. Grab the skull, grab the move brush, and just start fixing. There we go. That's better. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Let's add in our character's neck as well now. And you'll notice that I'm not adding a lot of meshes into... Actually, I'm going to use a capsule for this. I'm not adding a lot of separate meshes into my subtool palette because I don't need to at this point. I'm building up the whole surface of the creature, and ideally we want to keep it as one piece if we can. That's the goal here, okay? And I'm going to invert the... Oh, oops, I added it to the wrong bit. Hold on 2 seconds, folks. I want it added to here. I don't want to add anything to the skeleton if I can avoid it. There we go. Grab the move brush and we can start we're going to have a wider taper as we get to the bottom. I'm going to hit Control D while everything's masked just to give us a bit more in the way of geometry to work with here. We'll probably have to do that again because one of the things about using a capsule in Zbrush is that you don't get a huge amount of geometry in the middle. You do at each end, but there's not a lot of geo in the middle of it. But it is a useful shape to use, I find. And what we'll do here is we're going to take our clay tubes brush and we're just going to immediately add in a little bit of an indentation, like so. Okay. Now for the end, for the muzzle part, we're going to take this is where we are going to append a new mesh. So we're going to do something like this. We're going to dynamesh the the cylinder. My brain just isn't working today, folks. It's just not firing on all cylinders today, I'm afraid. So we'll do dynamesh, bring that down, try that again, lower it, and we'll just do a mirror and weld. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go into my selection options, choose the select rectangle, and do something like that. And I'm going to hit Control W a couple of times so that we now have two polygroups. And then we're going to separate them. So I'm going to do, actually, you know what? We'll do a group split instead. So if you have two polygroups on an object and you go into Subtool, scroll down to split, you can choose Group Split, and that will give you two separate pieces. We can choose Close Holes. I'm going to close the hole, but I don't want it to be completely flat across. I want to actually add a bit of weight to it, as you can see. And reason that we're doing that is now when I move them apart, I can create the idea of, or the indication of some lips for my ibex. And before we actually join them into the rest of the face, we will do a little bit of work on them. Okay. I need to turn off Dynamesh. This is something I always should put Dynamesh on my custom shelf because I have a habit of sometimes forgetting to turn it off, and then I'll accidentally hit Control and drag in the canvas, and that refreshes Dynamesh. Okay, so now we're going to do a merge down. So we're going to merge them back together again. I must be on the wrong one. Yes, I am. Merge down. Okay. Hit auto groups. So now they're just two separate polygroups. Now we can move them into place and scale them down. Can mask out the top section. We can start to now pull this down. So we're starting to create the overlap now, and then we can invert that to start shaping in the chin a bit more, which means I can now go back and start to reshape and refine the shape of the head overall. So we're going to add another subdivision into this one and start to smooth it out. Which is going to let me build up the shape a little bit here, because we've got a little bit more of a bump on the reference I've got here, and then we can flatten it down again as it gets to the forehead. And then the last thing we're going to put in before we Dynamesh this together is the nose. So for that, I'm going to append a Q cube, and then I'm going to go down to initialize, turn that into a 1x1 Q cube. Studio Sphinx Rose, thank you very much for the follow. And I'm going to then hit Control W once, and then delete the lower subdivisions on that. And then I will turn on symmetry, and then I'm going to turn that into a nose. Subdivide it again if I need to. And then we can position it. Once it's roughly in place, we can refine the shape and the size as needed. I do love it when models are at this stage because they look so unhinged. um, so let's do a little bit of sculpting into this area here, just to indicate roughly where those eyes are going to go. That looks about right to me. Just going to bring up, I've got some very sensible, well done. What's that? I missed that. Oh, just paid my bills. Oh, right, cool, yes. I agree, very sensible. Get those bills paid, people. Okay. So what we're going to do as well is I'm going to add a little bit of extra anatomy into this just to make my life a bit easier later on. So I'm going to pull down the neck section here and just pull that into position. And see, I can see already some of the problems I'm having with the shape. So I'm going to start bringing everything together again. So I'm going to start merging things down. Same as we did with the hippo though, I'm going to leave, I'm actually going to, I think I might split the lower jaw out again. So with this, I'm going to split and mask parts. And then the top will get merged in for the time being. And we'll leave the rest of it. Oh wait, we need the nose as well. That would be helpful. So merge down, okay. And what this is going to allow me to do is just fix the proportions a little bit easier. Okay, that's going to help me a bit. Actually, I'm not that far off from the reference I'm using, which I wish I could show you. That's kind of what it is I need. So we'll jump back to that and we'll pull this further down. Why are we getting such low intensity? There we go. Let's now add in using the curve tube snap brush, I'm going to lower the intensity. Now, if you've never used the curve tube snap brush before, what it's going to do is as I draw on a surface, it's going to snap a piece of curved geometry to that surface, like so, okay? And you can control how that looks with the stroke menu, etc. But there's another thing you can do, and that's instead of increasing or adjusting the depth of it, if you lower the intensity of the brush, what it will do is it'll actually flatten it down. So it won't become a cylinder anymore, it'll become much flatter, which is ideal for doing this type of muscle work on creatures and characters, okay? Because particularly for something like the neck muscles, which are not as voluminous as some people will do. They're actually a lot flatter. So that's what I'm about to do here. I'm just going to draw that down to there. Maybe lower the size of the brush a bit. Lower the intensity. There we go. And you can see as I lower that intensity, it's going to flatten the brush out. I'm going to do that one more time. That's better. And now in order to kind of set this down, I'm going to hold Alt and click on the surface, and that will commit it to the mesh. Then we can just use our sculpting brushes to tweak anything that got missed, and also to increase the taper as well. I'll just thin that out at the bottom. Art Passion 1K. Is there any way to fix BPR renders because it's not catching proper shadow and it's flattening the shadows? Okay, so I can show you that in a little second actually, Art Passion. Give me 2 seconds. So what we'll do is oh no, I've made a mistake. So I'm gonna have to take that and do mirror and weld. So let me just fix this. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So now we're going to take our top of our head here and we're going to Dynamesh this together. So to do that, I'm going to go into, you know what, let's duplicate it just to be safe. And then we'll go into Geometry, Dynamesh. I'll hit Dynamesh once and see what that gives me. That's not too bad. I'll maybe do a little bit higher. That's too high, so we're going to go split the difference. Perfect. All right, so now that I've done that, I'll hit mirror and weld, and now I can go through and start to smooth out some areas. So we're starting to blend these together now. And I will just make a few quick adjustments. There we go. We're going to come back to those in a second because we're going to have to put some horns in there. All right, now, model, why are you grey? So, somebody asked a question about BPR render, okay? And if you were not aware of BPR render in Zbrush, now I have a custom UI here. So my button for BPR is here, but you'll normally find it down the right-hand side at the top, okay? And if you go into render, it'll be in here as well. So if I hit BPR render, this is what I'm going to get. It looks okay. Now, the question was about not catching proper shadows. So that can really depend on how you've lit the scene and also what matte caps you're trying to render. So for example, if we switch over to a different matte cap, let's say gold, and I hit render, okay? It won't necessarily catch light in the same way that the standard material will. It will catch a shadow, but it might not catch a shadow in the way that you're expecting, okay, because of the way that matte caps work. Matte caps have a baked in light, okay? So if I change my interactive light here to there, you can see that we're getting a nice harsh shadow on one side of our character, and I hit render. That's going to appear in the BPR, all right? Now, if you go under the render settings here and go into render properties, no, not render properties, my apologies, BPR shadow, I used basic material. Okay, so I'm actually going to turn on the floor here as well because this is important. If you have the floor turned on in in ZBrush when you do the BPR render, you will get a shadow cast on your scene, like so, okay? And depending on the scale of your object inside a ZBrush is also going to affect how it's lit as well. So with the BPR render turned on, these are all the default shadow settings. So what you're going to have to do is go in here and start to adjust each of these until you're happy with how it's sitting on your model. Because the thing is, it's really hard to kind of diagnose as to why it's not catching on your model specifically. Because it could be shadow settings, it could be a scale of the model, that type of thing, all right? But in here, the ones I generally will address or use the most are the angle, the blur, and the strength. I generally leave the rest at default, okay? So if I take the strength and lower it, it's going to be really obvious. It's not going to give me as harsh a shadow, okay? No worries, Clip Hamper, take it easy. Thanks for coming along. And if I put that back to default, I can then change the angle and do another render. And you can see that that's going to change the effect again. Okay. Now, I would say the reason that I'm not getting a good floor light here, I'm not getting a good floor shadow, this is to do with the scale of my model, all right? So you may need to scale your model up in order to get a better result. The next thing we can also do is we can blur the shadow as well. It's not going to give me that much. Let's see if we can blur it a bit more. I don't have the samples up very high. That's a little bit better. But let me just put them back to normal now. So we put that back to 4, and I can't remember what the default angle is. So I'll put it to 0. But the other thing to be aware of when you are rendering with PBR inside of, what's this? Sometimes when I try to Dynamesh to stretch surfaces, the mesh gets cracks or holes. So many of them. Why is that? That again is linked with the resolution of your Dynamesh and with the scale of your model. Okay, because the scale inside a ZBrush, if you're working directly inside a ZBrush, the scale is incredibly important. And something that you should be aware of is that you have a button up here called Unify. And if I just put the magnifying glass on here, Unify. If you hold down Control, that'll tell you what this button will do. So it's essentially saying here is it's going to take all the subtools that we have in our scene and it's going to rescale them to ZBrush's default scale, which is a 2x2 cube or a 2x2x2 cube, okay? And that will ensure that all the brushes work correctly, as in the scales will work correctly, and you should find that your Dynamesh starts to work correctly as well. So if you are having issues with that and you're able to adjust it with the scale, okay, adjust it with the Unify, all right? But the other thing I wanted to finish up with the lighting is if you go into the light menu, you can turn the lights on and off, but it also is going to allow you to turn on new lights and adjust those behind your creature, your character, or your object to create a bit of a rim light. And then you can turn the other lights back on. When you do a render, you will get a better shadow effect on it because you've got lighting from different sources, okay? So I would say that if your shadow isn't catching correctly on the model, first thing to do is check the scale of your model. And secondly, check what kind of lights you've got in the scene, and also see if your BPR shadow settings are any different than the default, okay? And also make sure that the default light that you have, right, which is this one here, make sure that it's actually positioned in a decent place, all right? I mean, if I'm being honest, what I would potentially do is I would recommend looking at something like Marmoset or Blender for rendering. I wouldn't necessarily render in Zbrush's BPR render unless you're just doing kind of basic kind of passes for putting out to a still, okay? What's this? So that Unify won't disturb my mesh since I'm doing Kratos face refinement. I cannot say whether or not it'll disturb your mesh or not, Art Passion. I don't know. That's completely based on how you've set up your scene, I'm afraid. Okay, like I'm saying, if you've started in ZBrush and you need to, and you are able to change the scale of your model, then pressing the Unify button will ensure that everything works in ZBrush's scale. That's going to ensure that your brushes, your Dynamesh, and everything works as expected. I cannot say whether or not it will disturb your mesh, and I can't take any. I won't. I can't take any kind of blame if it does. All right, because I don't know. I don't know what your mesh is made up of. All right. So hopefully that kind of answers your question a little bit. Okay, let's jump back into our. Let's jump back in. So we have our lower part of our jaw. I'm just going to readjust my light here. Make sure that's, there we go. There we go. And we're just going to need to do a little bit more clean. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, that was my duplicate, right. So I'm just going to do a little bit more cleanup. On the mesh that I've made. And I'm going to start using some of the reference I've got. What's this? Yes, what Firestorm Studio has mentioned about Unify. That's a good thing to point out. Yeah, Unify will do weird things with your mesh, but it will adjust the scale if needs be. Okay, so let's actually start working on this in earnest a little bit more now. So we're going to start bringing in eyeballs. And we're going to do a little bit of sculpting to the side of the face here. Just to start getting in a little bit more form and definition. So we're going to take this space here at the side of the ear, side of the head even, and start separating out the ear a bit more, like so. We're going to come down with the jaw from there and bring it round to here. And bring that up into the ear area. And we're going to make a bit of a gap now. Tantrum, thank you very much for the follow. Much appreciated. And now that I've got that gap in there, I can see that I need to make some changes to the overall form of the neck. So I'm going to take my trim dynamic and start shaping that a little bit better, smoothing as I go. Might need to add a bit more heft to the front. Do you work in game studios also, or just teaching only? Yes, I have over 30 credits in feature film, VFX, and TV as well. I don't work in games. I've never worked in AAA games, but I've worked in VFX, CG, animation, concept, that type of thing for the last 18 years. But I do teach a lot as well. So I'm going to switch up my material here. I'm going to bring in a new material that I got the other day. Let's see. I've got a couple of new materials to work with. Just something to... I went in search of really vibrant materials that I could use for the stream so that people could see what I was doing. So I'm going to start now kind of cleaning up the forms a little bit more. So let's just clean up the eyeball a little bit. And what I'm also going to start doing here is I'm going to start outlining, again, using the reference, same way I have before with the hippo, and I'll show you on this image here. So what I'll start to do is I'll start to look at individual forms of just around the eyelid and where that then meets with another part of the form of the face, and then kind of move it around, and then kind of, I say move it around, but what I'll do is I'll work my way down and make sure that each of those elements blends together nicely. What's this? My super curious question, someone told me XGen doesn't work in games, so how do they do hair stuff? Hair cards, XGen is too intense. Yes, exactly, 100%. XGen can be used to make the fibers used on, to make the texture that's used on a hair card. That's a valid technique, but yeah, XGen, no, I can't imagine that would work overly well in any kind of real-time engine. It's just too heavy. There is systems that you could say are similar to XGen, but they're designed specifically for game engines in real time. Okay, so all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of blasting away some of the geometry at the top of the head where I know the horns are going to go. The horns on these creatures are insane. They are they take up like so much of the creature's head. It's amazing. I'm also going to turn on my ambient occlusion here. I'm just going to reduce the intensity a bit. So how do they create hair cards in Maya or Zbrush using multi-curve tool? Hair cards can be made in lots of different ways. You can create them in Zbrush using fiber mesh, but to be honest, I would recommend making them in something like Maya or Blender, and there is dedicated tools as well. Check out Fibershop for hair cards. Yeah, there we go, Firestorm Studio. Fibershop is apparently fantastic. I've never used it myself actually, but I have heard of it, and a lot of people have really lots of good things to say about it. So I'm going to take this eyeball and mirror it into here, and then back to the head. No, right, back to the head. What I would like to do, folks, because we're an hour and a half in. I did not realise. We've been saying that we've been answering quite a lot of questions. So, but we might sculpt for a bit longer than the 2 hours today, because I'd quite like to there's a couple of stages I want to get to. But we will be back tomorrow around 6:30. So there is that. We will be back tomorrow. So I'm just going to block this out a bit more. Maybe make this a bit larger at the back. Because while they're kind of part of the goat family, they're not technically goats. They're a bit brawnier than goats. But they're mountain goats, you know, so. So we're just going to thicken the neck up at the back here. There we go. That's better. You'd be amazed sometimes, folks, that you can be working on a model for a long time and it might not look how you expect it to look, and then you'll just do one little thing and then it just all starts to sing and come together. Through pain. That's the answer. Going to sound clip that noise. Use it as a notification noise. What noise? What did I do? What did I do? What have I done now? What have I got myself into? Okay, let me just... I don't even remember. You'll find out sometime, Pat. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So I'm just going to go in and change a little bit of the... that's this. Why is that not working? Why is my right mouse not working? That's weird. Okay, that's really strange. There we go. Zbrush is definitely behaving badly at the moment today for me. So we're just going to go and start changing the proportions a bit more now. And I think we're going to bring the jaw in now, the lower jaw. Bring that into the fray. Okay. Merge down. There we go. And let's do a quick Dynamesh together. So we'll do the picker, grab it, increase it just a little bit, and then Dynamesh. Grab our damn standard and just pick out any area that has kind of fused together that we didn't want, and then we can continue cleaning up. Congratulations, received 100 messages a day with Restream chat. Hey, excellent. That's what we want. I'm going to take the damn standard now and start to just outline the nose section here, and we want just outline where the muzzle goes, and then we've got another part here. And I'll do this quite a lot as well, sketch over the model just to kind of figure out where things need to go. Yeah, that's looking ibex-like. Need to fill in the face a bit more. We've also got quite a lot of fur to add to this this guy when we're done. So the neck is going to get adjusted eventually. Sigfrid's, hola Pat and everyone. Hey Sigrid, how you doing? Okay. So let's just bring in the anatomy now, or start adjusting some of this. So I'm going to start pulling down from the back of the neck here. I'm going to change my material now to something, I mean, we like the bright colours, but I want people to be able to kind of see some of the kind of the more subtle parts of it. So we'll bring in this material here. We'll maybe increase the intensity of the ambient occlusion. Doing great, finally getting the time to be here on the live stream. Hey, brilliant. Glad you're doing well. Okay. We are sculpting an ibex today. So basically just a mountain goat. So under there we've got probably going to go a little bit quiet, folks, while we just kind of lock in a little bit and try and get a bit more done. But if anybody has questions, feel free to ask in the chat, as always. Questions have been really great this stream, and apparently I've made a funny noise of disappointment, so, you know. What are you going to do, right? Can't be helped. Okay, now we can just start to maybe build that up here, bring that down. We need to flatten out the brows here a bit. I'm going to pull down the lids a bit. We need to bring out, maybe we need to push the eyeballs back in ever so slightly. Okay. Do you use much of the smooth brush, or do you prefer the polish or other technique? Generally, I will use the smooth brush. My go-to for smoothing, though, is the trim dynamic brush on a kind of low intensity, and I use that to refine each of the forms. The technique I use is to plane off all the kind of harsh edges, and the reason I work like this is I find it gives me a more natural, organic look rather than like a super clean, smooth look. And again, it's really just a personal preference. That's the main reason I do it. I'm going to take the standard brush here just to add a bit more oomph to the lower lid, like that. And we're going to have to Dynamesh again, I think. Give ourselves a little bit more resolution. So we're going to do 112, we're going to tap project. There we go. And then we can smooth that back. Grab the trim dynamic and start kind of working around the eyelid a bit more. There we go. Take the standard brush again. Shows more natural, and saw how you make each brush. Notice your bump up in general line of muscle and then make brush on the direction of the skin. I was asking because it looks very clean. Ah, thank you. Yeah, it's, again, I think it's one of those kind of funny things because you want to try and show people different ways of working, but I will always kind of revert back to a lot of what I know will work. particularly for how I like to sculpt, because everyone uses a technique that makes the most sense to them. And that's what I always recommend people do. Use a technique that allows you to understand the forms the best. And if you don't like the way someone is doing something, then you find a way that works for you. Because at the end of the day, you just want to get, you really are just trying to get a shape out. You're just trying to interpret a shape onto a 3D mesh. So whichever works for you. Really, there's, you know, I mean, I believe that there's rules that we should follow in regard to things like UVs, topology. These are things that, you know, we do need to follow because they're important for other departments in a pipeline, other artists, you know. But if you're just sculpting away, I actually don't think there is any wrong way of doing it. You know, there's ways that people prefer. There's ways that might be quicker. You might learn a new technique. So that's the thing. Don't close yourself off to learning a new technique. Okay, so we're kind of getting somewhere with it. But for him to be an ibex, we need to get those horns in, and that's what we're going to do next. I think we'll do the horns to kind of finish up almost, but we've managed to get through quite a lot in a fairly short space of time there. So I'm just going to use the knife brush to clean up that edge. And I'll do a final pass of adjusting the proportions. So let's just get that to the right angle. Looks like we need to be a bit thinner here. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, this needs to be much thinner in the face. And the lower jaw has to be a bit smaller. So we're going to have to do a little bit of work on the muzzle here. So I'm going to mask the bottom part. And I'm going to start rounding out and softening the muzzle at the front. Although we've lost pressure sensitivity. There we go. If you ever lose pressure sensitivity when you're working in ZBrush, I've said this before, but in case anyone doesn't know, if you tab away to another piece of software that you've got running, and it can be anything, even just an open window on your, like a file browser window, tab away to that and then come back to ZBrush and it should fix the pressure sensitivity. Yeah, so let's... And then we'll take our damn standard and just outline a bit of a shape here. And that looks about right, but we might just need to reshape it. Now that we've sculpted it in, we're just going to have to reshape the nose, pull it back a bit. Yeah, that's better. That's much better. Okay. Well, folks, I do hope that everyone is having a good start to their week. I know I am because I'm streaming. I'm getting to stream. I'm getting to kind of hang out with all you guys and see how you are doing. And that really does mean a lot. And it means a lot to everyone who comes along to these streams. I know we say it a lot, but, you know, it's very true. We wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. And on that note, just to kind of, while I'm procrastinating before I figure out how I want to do the horns, if you are interested in checking out more from Firestorm, be sure to check the banner below of the stream. You'll be able to follow us on all of our social medias. And also be sure to check out our Discord. It's a really great community. And if you're a new artist, or even if you're a professional artist, it doesn't matter. If you just want a really supportive place to hang out, then check out the Discord for Firestorm Studios. You will not be disappointed. Am I biased because I stream? Yes. But ask anyone. I'm also very honest when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I don't mess around with that type of thing. So, yeah. If I'm telling you it's a good place to be, it's a good place to be. So, trust me, I'm a sculptor. No, in all seriousness, folks, it is a really nice community if you want to just hang out, chat, or just watch what's going on, okay? So, all right. Let's fix the bottom, and then we will, or the bottom lip even, and we will then do our, we'll do our horns. So the main thing we need to do here is, see, this is something, there we go. I need to fix this as well. This is not the right shape. Now it is. There we go. And we're just going to bring this in. If I don't want to use the brush, what's this? You have a podcast voice. It's amazing. Lovely sculpt. Looking forward to the end result. Thank you very much. That's a very kind thing to say. I'm glad you like my voice. No, that genuinely, that's a very, very kind thing to say. Thank you. That's made my day. Thank you for that, Jaromayo. So what I have done here though is I've kind of taken away the strength of his chin. And thank you very much. Yeah, the sculpt, we're getting there. We're getting there. We've been at it now for about just under 2 hours, but we've stopped to do a couple of questions, so it's we've still got a little bit of ways to go. Once I get out of NDA, I should start streaming. Yes, you should, Dennis. 100% you should start streaming. And then you and I can do co-streams, which would be fun. Okay. Just going to add a bit of extra. All right. Now, the eyes are too big, so we're going to make them smaller. And then that means I have to make the eyelids a bit smaller as well. So we're going to scale them down by masking them out. I'm going to invert that. I don't know what I've done there. There we go. All right. Let's now center that, and we'll just zoop. Done. Aye, that be a braw looking ibex. So, and if anyone's curious, braw is a Scottish term for nice, if anyone's wondering. So if you ever hear a Scots person saying braw, B-R-A-W, it means nice. Okay. So if they say you're a braw person, it means you're a good person. There's me forcing my Scottish culture on you all. So let's just push the back of the eyelid in a little bit, because the eyes of goats and stuff, they have this, they bulbous, they've got a kind of this bulbiness to them. What's this? What? We sure could, but then I would also show how much of a messy sculptor I am. You say messy sculptor, you've seen how I sculpt. I am not a clean sculptor. So, hey Holly, thanks for coming along. Okay, right folks, enough procrastinating. Let's save the file and let's make some horns. Okay, so the way I'm going to make these horns might not be of what people are expecting. So you can make horns in ZBrush plenty of ways, right? If you look at the horns of an ibex, obviously we have a lot of repeating patterns, so technically you could make a repeated section of the horn and duplicate it up, or use a ray mesh in ZBrush. Many different ways to kind of approach it that way, which is a completely valid way of doing it. And I've actually got a personal piece that I'm working on right now, and I used that exact methodology. But I want to approach this of a more like a more sculptural kind of a way, so that I'm kind of doing everything from scratch type of thing. So with that in mind, we are going to first of all change the material. I think I'm going to go back up here. Let me see. And I'm going to go back into my FP and I'm going to choose Sculpt 9. There we go. Actually, nobody can see that. Can you see that one? There we go. That's better. Same thing we did with the hippo. All right. So I'm going to go into my tool palette here and I'm going to choose Append. And I'm going to append a spiral. So with the spiral, I'm going to go down to initialize. Actually, do you know what? We can't do it in here. My apologies, folks. Let me just delete that. I'm going to switch out from my goat here, or my ibex, and I'm going to create myself a spiral. Like that. Now, when you make a standard primitive in ZBrush, you can't actually sculpt on it, right? So if I just start off with this in my subtool palette, right, and I grab my standard brush and I try to sculpt on it, ZBrush is going to say, nope, you can't do it. I need you to turn it into a 3D model first, right? So if I do that, make Polymesh 3D, I can sculpt on it. That's what you would normally do in ZBrush. However, I want to change this overall geometry before I start sculpting on it. So if I scroll down to the bottom here and go to initialize, see, oh wait a minute, I'm going to have to do this again because I turned it into a Polymesh 3D, didn't I? So we'll try that again. Let me see here, Spiral 3D. There we go. If I go into initialize here, I can now change the shape of this spiral using these settings. Now there's other ways to do this, but this is just one of the ways I like to learn it. Sorry, this is the way I like to do it. And I learned this technique from an amazing ZBrush artist called Kyle Katarn, who I highly suggest you check out. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I can adjust the coverage of this like so. And then I can change the subdivisions to something like 5. And the reason I'm doing that is that I'm going to get that natural curve at the front, the flat part at the back. Okay. And I can go in here and I'm going to change the, let me see, where is it? Thickness. So I can change the thickness, get something a little bit thinner. And then I can adjust the coverage again, like so. And that is, I can probably lower the divisions here as well. Let's get it to something a bit more even. So I'm going to put in 24. And we can continue to play with the settings here. So I'm just going to rotate that around until it's kind of straight. I can play with the displacement of it. And that's going to change the shape as well. And I can adjust the thickness. I'm going to lower that a bit more. And then I'm going to lower the coverage to 100. Well, that's better. That gives me more of the shape I'm looking for, but maybe just do that 120. That's pretty good. We can adjust the radius. There we go. I'm just going to increase the radius just to bring that up a little bit. Also, it's going to thicken the end of the horn for me. And there we go. So now I have the basis for my creature's horn. Now what I can do is turn that into Polymesh 3D. Go back to my ibex, and I'm going to go to Subtool, Append, and I'm going to bring in, is this the right one? Let's hope so. Oh, that's the eyeballs. We don't want that. There we go. Is that the right one? Yeah. So now we can just scale those up. And of course we can do a little bit more adjustment now that we've got it in. Now that we're actually into the scene file, we can get it into place like so. And now we can move our pivot. And you could say it's probably a bit of an older school method, but I just love the way that Kyle taught it, and it's kind of stuck with me. I saw it ages ago, and I think I got his name right. So I'm just going to increase the size of that to there, and then just I'm going to bring over this reference here and use this as my proportional reference. So let's get rid of this one. Let's just do that. Bring this in. And then I'm going to bring up the head. Yeah, we got it pretty close, folks. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay, so with that in place now, I'm going to make a few changes. So I'm going to lock my camera, make sure I have symmetry on, and you know what? Let's mask that out like so. I'm going to go into the rotate tool, grab my transpose line and just rotate that up and move it back. And then I can probably rotate it a bit more. There we go. And now I can adjust, where is it? Move brush, there we go. Start to make a few changes to it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to hit store camera. Ah, drat, forgot about that. I have to have perspective on. So store camera 1. And now I can unlock my camera, move around, make sure I've got only got the ears masked in this case. Sorry folks, I forgot how small it must have looked on the screen there. So now that I've got that in place, I can go to camera 1, that'll switch it back, and now I can move those into place like that. Great, okay. Now we've got a little bit of extra work to do on the horn, so it can fit in place properly. So we'll just, oh, oops, there we go. There we go. So we're not going to get the exact length I'm looking for there, but we will get that shortly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control D, just to give myself a little bit more resolution, so I can start reshaping the horns a bit more. And immediately what I'll do is I'll do mirror, merge into one subtool. And there we go. But what I want to do actually, this is another cool thing that I learned from Kyle. I'm going to take these areas here, we're going to delete them. Oh, first of all, we're going to delete the higher subdiv, and I'm going to turn on double. I'm going to take my select lasso here, and I'm just going to hide that poly loop so that I've got a poly group from it. Okay. And then I can use that later on. Oh no, did I delete the... Oh, oops, what did I do there? Ah, I deleted too many. Bear with me. There we go. Delete those. And back to this. There we go. And that's going to give us that kind of inside kind of line, although I quite like... No, I'll keep it as it is. And what this will allow me to do is I can mask this out like that. And then we can kind of maybe push those in. So if we were to take something like the deformation tab here, and we can inflate those in the way, like so. And that's going to give us that nice kind of concave section to it for the shape. And now I'm going to turn on my dynamic symmetry and increase the size. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. A little bit more of a movement to the base. Time are we at, folks? Okay, we've went over by a little while, so hopefully nobody minds. We're only a couple of minutes over. So now that I've got that in place, I can fix some of this anatomy that's actually honestly been bothering me. But I was like, no, we need to get to the horns, but this anatomy was bothering me the whole time. It's just one of those things, I guess. Right, where is my ZBrush? There it is. What we got? Ipicano, thank you very much. I apologize, folks, if I absolutely butcher the pronunciation of your usernames. It is not meant. I just can't speak properly, I guess. You know. And I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the kind of popular thing that Scottish people are supposedly not able to say. There's a phrase, purple burglar, which I can say, but some people do struggle with it in Scotland. It's to do with how we roll our R's a lot of the time. So don't get me wrong, I have to think about it. So there you go, there's a funny little factoid for you if you were not already aware of it, folks. So, but yes, folks, it's been an absolute pleasure today getting to sculpt an ibex with you. And we're not quite finished. We're not quite finished. We are going to continue with this tomorrow. I would like to kind of take this further and get some fur onto him, give him his little beard, and sculpt in the details for the horns. So I'm just going to do a little bit of final cleanup here, just to get the proportions and the anatomy fixed after we made a change to the pose. What am I using? Yeah, that's fine. There we go. So folks, before we finish up, if anyone has any last little questions, or if there's anything you want me to quickly go over, please put it into the chat now, and we can spend a little bit of extra time going over anything if anyone has any specific questions about things. Oh, actually, I think I do have a shot at the back of one of these guys' heads. There we go. See if I'm getting this right. I think the ears might be in the wrong place, if I'm being honest. Although according to the proportion image, they're not, but according to this image, they are. So do you know what we're going to do? We're going to quickly fix it because it'll bug me if I don't. As an Italian, some names get quite silly sounding when I say them. I'm with you right there, Jaromeo. I'm the same. Certain words I say just don't sound correct. It's just, I guess it's just my accent. It's just how I say things. There we go. That's better. Okay, so now I need to clean up this absolute atrocity that I've created at the back of the head. Look at the mess of this. Right, let's get some backface mask on so we don't destroy anything. Let's just keep smoothing that until we clean it up. There we go. And we'll just get a nice little extra roll of skin coming there from the back of the ear. So yeah, we're still looking a bit rough, but we're slowly getting there, folks. Yeah, that should be a bit smoother, kind of going up to here. There we go. So we'll grab the trim dynamic here just to clean things up a bit, and I'm going to switch over to another material. How do you like your ibexes? Green. Maybe a bit too green, right? Wow, that's... Also, I apologize, folks. I do tend to change my materials quite a lot. When I'm sculpting. 5 ads. Oh no! Sorry, Jaromeo. Probably don't need ambient occlusion with that. Right, let's grab the trim dynamic and just start cleaning up the snout a little bit. But I don't want to get rid of the rougher work that I've done, because I actually quite like that style when I'm sculpting. I like to keep things almost as though I've done a little clay sketch. Hold on, I'll add more ads. All right. Okay. I kind of want to keep sculpting, folks, but we've been sculpting now for over 2 hours. So keep going. Okay, we'll keep sculpting for a little bit longer then. Okay, let's see how this connects to. Need to find a better. Aha, there we go. Need a cleaner shot of the ear and how it connects to the head. Aha, see what I've done wrong. See what I've done wrong. This is another thing, folks, right? I would say, you know, if you make a mistake with something, don't worry about it, okay? Mistakes can be fixed. Accidents happen, and I think there's a lot of shame involved. I think people sometimes feel as though they should be ashamed if they've made a mistake or they haven't done something or it doesn't look great. Don't let it bother you if you can, okay? And another thing as well, folks, is that, you know, sometimes everyone has an off day with their art. So if you are working away on something and you're like, yeah, this is going really great one day, and then you start sculpting another day, or drawing or painting or anything, whatever craft it is you do, you might just have a day where it just doesn't work. So, hello, sir. Good to see you. Hey, Radhi. Thank you very much. Good to see you as well. Thank you very much for coming along. It's good to have you here. It's good to have you here. So we're just going to start adding a little bit of indication of some wrinkles now. This is actually one of my favorite things about this type of animal. Actually, to be honest, ungulates. So if anyone's not aware, an ungulate is any animal with a hoof, right? So if you find an animal with hooves, it's part of the ungulate family. So but they also tend to share this thing with their ears, where they've got very wrinkly ears, where it joins the head. And I just think it's one of the nicest things to get to sculpt is, you know, and it's because their ears are so important to them. You know, they're moving around all the time and they're checking and stuff, and checking for things, you know, and they're listening all the time. So they get all these nice compression wrinkles. What's this? Every mistake is punishable by people you've never met, bursting into your home and critiquing every mistake you made. That escalated quickly. Yeah, sure. We need to start thinning out the ear a bit now. There we go. So as we get to the end of the ear here, just start thinning it out, carving away. What's this? If you say so. We love wrinkly ears here. Yeah, we all like wrinkly ears. Who doesn't like a wrinkly ear? So let's okay. What I'm going to do with the eye here is I'm going to duplicate them. You know what? Actually, I'm going to make this easier on myself, because Zbrush will just shout at me if I try and do it the way I want. So I'm going to take this eyeball and I'm going to add a layer to it, only so that I can sculpt that shape on it temporarily. And that is so that I can duplicate that. And I'm going to take the duplicate and I'm going to delete the layer. And I'm going to scale the duplicate up and then just move it back. I need the other eyeball to be on though. That would be helpful. There we go. And I'm doing this for a reason. This is to give me some geometry that I can sculpt the inner eye with, the edges of the eye. Oh, what's this? I'm a beginner sculptor that wants to sculpt their own character for animation. How do you recommend studying and practicing? Yes, get yourself a mentor. Obviously, you can go to university, you can buy a workshop, you can self-train as well. But if you were self-training, then the kind of thing I would suggest doing is self-training while having a mentor to kind of keep you on the right path. Okay. The one thing I can give you for free though is if you're really interested in doing characters for animation, buy yourself an anatomy book. Doesn't have to be a fancy one, just a basic anatomy book, so you understand the locomotion of the human body, and particularly if you're wanting to make them for animation. So that you can understand how to make them so that they work. All right. For only options to contact. As Firestorm Studio has said, you can of course hire a mentor through Firestorm. But that is one of the ways I would do it. And I think from a practicing perspective, anatomy. And I know it's probably something you've heard over and over and over again, but I cannot stress how important it is in doing anything character based. Okay. So what I've done here is I've made myself a duplicate for the inside of the eye, and that is just so that I can sculpt on it now. If I take my standard brush, I can sculpt on this and I can start to make the little nictitating membrane that a lot of these creatures have, and we can start building out things like this. There we go. In all seriousness, folks, I do kind of wish that I had a mentor when I was, and what I mean by that is like an individual mentor. I did have mentors throughout my career. I've had lots of mentors that I have met, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have met the people that I've met in my career who have shared their knowledge with me and helped me become the kind of artist that I wanted to be. I've never considered myself, you know, and I know this might sound, you know, oh, that's just something somebody says, but I've never considered myself a great artist. I consider myself someone who enjoys making art, and I enjoy the things I do. And I think at the top of the, you know, I think that's the kind of top of the priority for you. I mean, I know I'm a good artist because I've been working in the industry for 18 years. So if I wasn't a good artist, then I know that that wouldn't be the case. You know, but I think something I've learned over the years is that you need to just enjoy what you do. We're not here for very long, folks. Enjoy what you want to do in life. You know, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, then do what makes you happy. Okay. Cool. So now I can delete. I can kind of duplicate the eyes over, but I think I'm going to delete the. I'm going to delete the layer here because I want to do this better on the eyeball later on. So we'll mirror across our eyeballs and our the gooey bits, the kind of caruncula and the nictitating membrane and things like this. See, I'm a pro. I know all the names. The gooey bits of the eye. You gotta have fun when you're doing this stuff, folks. You gotta have fun. Okay, so let's change up the material on the eye though. We're going to turn that to a toy plastic shader, and I'm going to just fill it with a dark, kind of dark brown color. Turn on mRGB, make sure my RGB intensity is up to 100 and hit fill object. Now I'm going to switch back to the material I was using, which was this cool blue color. There we go. That's just going to give me a little highlight for the eye. Okay, it just kind of adds a bit more life to it. And we'll paint up the eye later on as well. Pat is both great and an artist. Thank you very much, Firestorm. You're very kind to me. Thank you. I think we could be ready to finish up for the day. Speaking of mentors, the reason I will actually have to finish up is I have a mentorship call later on today that I need to prep for. So so I'm just going to do a couple of extra little adjustments. He doesn't look very happy, does he? Let's see if we can fix his mouth. That's better. I say he doesn't look happy. I think it's just me not happy with the look of the face. So, out of curiosity, folks, the last thing before we finish up, I'm going to ask, what's your favourite animal? You know, I know that not everyone's going to have one, but what animal that, you know, when you see an animal in a magazine, online, or in a, you know, in a reel, what animal makes you just kind of laugh or smile? I don't really have one. Cow. That is a great answer. I like that, Empress. I love that, and I love how excited you were to tell us. Cows are fantastic animals. They're full of character. And if you've never seen a cow run and hop and skip, look that up. They're amazing to watch. Bird. That's a good one. Just birds in general then, Dennis. Not anyone in particular, just bird. Birds are really dumb. And that's why I love them. I do like birds. I think ravens and pigeons are my favourite type of bird. It's like immediate neuron activation. Favourite animal? Cow. Okay, right. I keep saying it's time to go, and I don't leave, but I am having a lot of fun with this. Okay, switch up the alpha here, lower the intensity. Crows, they're silly. Love crows. Love crows. Love crows to bits. Okay. So we need to just... What I'm just doing here, folks, is I'm kind of giving myself... this is more of like a marker for myself of how I want certain things to flow on the model, like the form. So I've just taken my clay build-up brush that I like to use, and I've changed the alpha to alpha 61 or 62. And I'm just kind of using that to lightly kind of cross-hatch in where I want things to go. And there we go. And I do feel as though we're going to have to do some changes to... There we go, that's better. Okay, folks. It's time to say goodbye. So we're going to save the file. What's this? Thank you for streaming as always. Love watching people work as inspiration to work harder at what I do. You're welcome, Empress, you're welcome. All right, folks, it is time for us to finish up for the afternoon. It's been wonderful speaking with you and hanging out with you while we sculpt for the last 2.5 hours. The questions have been absolutely fantastic in the chat, and thank you again to all of the people who followed us today. Please remember to check out the Firestorm socials. You'll find all the details in the bottom of the stream, and remember to come and join us over on Discord as well. So yes, sorry folks, I lost my train of thought there as I was looking for a button. The only thing we have left to say is that there will be more streams happening this week. I'll be streaming again tomorrow at about 6:30. We also have our very own Heather, who will be streaming at, I believe, 2 o'clock tomorrow. I can't remember who else is streaming tomorrow, but please check out the Discord and the socials and you'll find a whole list of everyone that is streaming this week. It's a very, very packed week full of streams. All right, so it just leaves me to say thank you all once again for coming along. I will see you all again tomorrow, and until then, I hope something nice happens to you. Bye for now, folks.